Very glad you're with us here on the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. In just a moment, we'll be talking about Jimmy Kimmel's indefinite suspension as host of the late night show on ABC. Get into the details of that and what's turning into a bit of a controversy about his indefinite suspension. We'll also be taking a look at the eye-rolling comments of former President Barack Obama about how he never took advantage of tragedies to try to score points with against his political opponents. And remember that guy who they thought was the shooter in the beginning, gave himself up, said, "Just shoot me, I'm the shooter." And then it turned out he wasn't the shooter. Well, he's a really bad guy. And we're going to find out a lot more about him in just a moment, too. So, Jim, I don't know if there's a good martini today. I don't really think so, although Jimmy Kimmel not being on the air is certainly a good thing, but that's a little more complicated as you dig into it. So what are you most pumped about today?
It is. I do kind of feel like if you're a cop who arrests that guy, and it turns, arrest me, you get him, and it turns out he did not do the bad thing that he appeared to be confessing to. But he turned out to do this other really awful thing. Yeah, it's a win-win. Okay, you got him. It's kind of like on Halloween, you go trick-or-treating, and I got something really good in my bag, it turned out. By the way, people who are watching this on YouTube, and by the way, if you're enjoying this in the traditional audio podcast format, that's great. That's fine. We're not going to do sight gags. You don't have to change if you don't want to. But we're on YouTube, and people can see I'm in a different location. Believe it or not, listeners, the workers are noisier today than they have been in past episodes. When you've heard the and all that other noise, it's even worse today. So I'm in a different part of the house, and hopefully it's not too interrupting. I will shout if necessary, so that you can hear me. Because hey, who likes this when they're taping a allegedly professional podcast?
This is the only time in his career that Jim has ever identified with Lawrence O'Donnell and just stop the hammering.
We'll do it live. Yeah, Lawrence, I feel you. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, we'll get to all of this in just a moment, starting with Jimmy Kimmel. But in the meantime, how's your business doing? Hopefully it's doing great, and hopefully it's growing. We got some economic headwinds to some extent. We had some less than great job numbers, but we did get a rate cut yesterday. So hopefully that encourages business owners and some others to engage in some economic activity. But the bottom line is, you're never sure exactly what's going to come down the pike, whether it's the state of the economy, interest rates, the markets, whatever. But until you can figure out what those factors are going to be, you control what's controllable for your business. And when it comes to taking care of those tasks that have to be taken care of, the answer is NetSuite by Oracle.
NetSuite by Oracle helps you close the books in days instead of weeks, which means you spend less time looking backwards and more time focusing on what's next. Almost like an oracle. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars, NetSuite helps you respond to the immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities.
Yeah, NetSuite by Oracle is the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid system. And Jim just talked about seizing opportunities. Well, one opportunity is to download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/martini. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/martini. That's netsuite.com/martini. All right, Jim, it was last evening when this news came out, which means Jimmy Kimmel got to go home early last night because I don't think he did a show last night. Here's the story from USA Today. Jimmy Kimmel's late-night talk show was suspended indefinitely following the host's comments on the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Walt Disney-owned ABC said Wednesday that it will indefinitely stop airing Jimmy Kimmel Live after the late-night host's comments about Kirk's assassination came under harsh criticism from the head of the Federal Communications Commission. And so basically what happened here is that a lot of local affiliates didn't like what he said on Monday night, and there's groups of affiliates owned by companies like Sinclair and Nexstar, and they in particular protested. First of all, here is what Kimmel said on Monday night, if you haven't heard it already.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
And so this is exactly what we were talking about earlier in the week, Jim, where folks on the left, despite all the evidence coming in about the motivations of this shooter, saying, oh, had Republican parents or whatever, must be on the right. And so Jimmy Kimmel pushing that lie. That wasn't a joke. He was engaging in disinformation there, of course. And so these affiliates responded. Now, if the affiliates had just done this on their own, that would be the marketplace at work. And while the left would be howling mad, of course, as always, that would be understandable. That's just the consequence culture as we've talked about it. But that's not the end of the story, because the chairman of the FCC, Brendan Carr, did weigh in on this, and he tweeted out yesterday, broadcast TV stations have always been required by their licenses to operate in the public interest. That includes serving the needs of their local communities. And broadcasters have long retained the right to not air national programs that they believe are inconsistent with the public interest, including their local community's values. I'm glad to see that many broadcasters are responding to their viewers as intended. And in other interviews, Brendan Carr has made it pretty clear that the FCC was actively involved in this effort, which complicates things. It's in some ways similar to the Pam Bondi conversation. Look, if your employer wants to fire you, that's different than the government prosecuting you for your speech. And so kind of the same thing here. And so, but there's a debate brewing on the right. On the one hand, you've got folks like Guy Benson who are saying, this is a subjective standard that Brendan Carr is laying out. What stops a future leftist version of Carr from using this excuse to meddle in conservative talk radio, and on it goes. Others are saying, no. Disney canceled Roseanne. Disney canceled Gina Carano. And oh, by the way, the Biden administration was, of course, pushing social media platforms to stifle or cancel people altogether, including Donald Trump, by the way, in 2021. So, Jim, how do you sift through all this?
If Carr had never said anything, this would be a perfect story. And I guess the question is, would ABC have felt the need to indefinitely suspend Kimmel in the absence of Carr's statements? The reaction from Sinclair affiliates suggests that this was a burgeoning, serious displeasure with the show. There's also reports floating around this morning that Kimmel had planned on addressing it, that he was going to put out something like a clarification, but he was not going to apologize. And the implication there is that the ABC said, that's not good enough. We got to step in. The show's suspended indefinitely. And I find that, look, again, I kind of wonder if Carr is the right guy for this job, because he seems like, it's nothing about being a Trump supporter, but he seems to basically believe that as FCC chairman, he is now the de facto editor and content manager for broadcast television. That's really not the way the FCC is supposed to look at his job, particularly in matters like if Brendan Carr comes out and says, as a private citizen, I think what Jimmy Kimmel said was terrible. Okay, but the problem is you're also the FCC chair, and you've made very clear that you intend to use the power of your office to go after network television that you think is bad. And I think that's really at best a gray area and very problematic. And again, I think in this case, it stepped on the toes or interrupted a process that looked like it was going to come to the same outcome without the government stepping into this. Now, having said that, I'm kind of paraphrasing some other folks on Twitter today when they say they really want folks on the right who are defenders of free speech and who have previously been critical of cancel culture to come riding to the ramparts to defend Jimmy Kimmel's First Amendment right to lie through his teeth about the guy who murdered Charlie Kirk. Greg, I don't know about you. And that's how they want us to spend today. And I don't know about you, but I've been really meaning to get a haircut for a while now. I got some trips coming up. Also, you can hear the workers. I got to look in to see what they're doing okay. And my sock drawer is a mess. I've been putting off reorganizing. So I might have to do all that before I come riding to the rescue of Jimmy Kimmel and say, oh, what a terrible shame it is that somebody in the government said something and that ABC and Disney are knuckling under and not standing up for his First Amendment to, put out a blatant lie. And the other thing I'm just going to observe, Greg, our podcast is snarky. We like to laugh. I hope we never cross the line into obnoxiousness. I think that's probably in the eye of the beholder. But I'm going to make an observation. I remember when Jimmy Kimmel had made a bet with Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz won, and they did a charity basketball game. It was a free throw shooting or horse or something like that.
Horse, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And if you went back and watched the video, Ted Cruz looks like he's having the time of his life because he's up against an opponent that makes him look like Jordan, right? Svelte and athletic compared to Jimmy Kimmel. But the whole thing is supposed to be raising money for charity. And Cruz acts like he's having the time of his life and that he feels like in Kimmel, Yeah, they got really strong disagreements, but he feels like he's got a worthy adversary, and they're able to take this disagreement and turn it into something that's good. Jimmy Kimmel does not, his body language, his comments, his entire tone of voice, none of that's, he suggests he has utter disdain for Ted Cruz and that he regrets agreeing to do this. And he's doing this because he knows if he didn't do it, he'd get a lot of grief for it, but he doesn't want to be there. And he just wants to tell off Ted Cruz and storm out of the place. Like, go back, watch the video coverage of yourself. You know, maybe if you feel like I'm exaggerating or not characterizing it, but I think if you look at that that was certainly my takeaway from this, was that Kimmel's doing this because he has to, but in the end, he can't stand him. And in the end, Jimmy Kimmel's, I'm going to try not to use words we don't use in this podcast, he's a jerk. He's just somebody who's who just feels utter contempt for people who disagree with him. And, you know, you and I can remember when he and Adam Carolla were watching girls jump up and down on trampolines on The Man Show. So now when you pose as the defender of Me Too and feminism and all that stuff, it feels a little bit of a very politically convenient transformation, but fine, whatever. I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. And that makes me, and I think he's got a long history of snotty, obnoxious, out-of-line comments towards folks on the right, which doesn't make me eager to defend him. And I think if you are a jerk to people, don't be surprised when they're not eager to come running to your aid. And so there is this phenomenon I've seen all over Washington where people who treat other people badly then expect them to jump to their defense. And lo and behold, when you treat people without respect, they may not be so eager to come along and help you when you need it. Life lesson, folks. If this were NBC, the more you know. Don't be a jerk.
Speaking of NBC, they're the only one with a talk show host standing at this point, right after the local news.
Jimmy Fallon, I'm not going to offend anybody, you know. I got some knock-knock jokes for you, you know.
Yeah, no tears for Jimmy Kimmel whatsoever. He has been obnoxious. He's been harsh. And just this brazen lie. This wasn't a joke that he was trying to say. He was basically gaslighting the American people. I personally believe he peaked when he was trying to help people win Ben Stein's money back in the day on that show on Comedy Central.
Deep cut. Good job, Greg.
But you know, then there's other people reacting to this. Of course, I think the main takeaway here is that the best thing Brendan Carr could have done was nothing. Just let this inertia happen, and there wouldn't be a controversy, at least in terms of government intervention here. The left would still be freaking out, as evidenced by Keith Olbermann, who has the worst take possible on this. In addition to demonizing Disney in several different tweets, he says, quote, "Burn in hell, Sinclair." And I'm not kidding here, alongside Charlie Kirk. Jim, I think we know who the worst person in the world is.
Well, I was just about to say, you know, of all the people who could say, isn't it terrible that people are demonizing each other? Hey, Keith Olbermann, you can sit down on this one. You know, you peaked at SportsCenter. Dan Patrick, you know, those were the good old days. I would love to see the Keith Olbermann who showed up in Hootie and the Blowfish's video for "I Only Want to Be With You." Those were the good old days when we could all like Keith Olbermann. Yeah, no, it's not just the hypocrisy of it. Like, people seem really morally blind, or you know, blind to their own past statements, actions, and all that stuff. And again, yeah, like I think Brendan Carr would make a really good media critic for some conservative. Put him over at Media Research Center or Newsbusters or any one of those. Like, he'll fit in well there. But when you have the power of government regulation, it's a very different story. You have to, you know, view the whole thing differently. And, you know, I don't know if there'll be lawsuits over this or anything, but otherwise Kimmel would be in the same spot as Stephen Colbert. There was no FCC pressure to get rid of Colbert. CBS was like, we're sick and tired of losing tens of millions of dollars on your show.
Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, this could have been a lot cleaner. But, again, no tears for Jimmy Kimmel. We'll see what happens here. There might be some lawsuits. We don't know. But one thing we know for sure is that Keith Olbermann needs a lot of help. So he needs a doctor, clearly. Jim, you and I are of the age where every day we wake up, we figure out which body part's going to hurt that day. And then tomorrow's just going to be a different one. It's just crazy. But when it comes to finding the right doctor, there's no better choice than ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors and then click to instantly book an appointment. You don't have to get on the phone with anybody.
You know, Greg, if somebody comes to one of our listeners and says, "Why aren't you defending Jimmy Kimmel's First Amendment rights today?" You can say, "Oh, I'd love to, but I have a doctor's appointment." Because with ZocDoc, you can find the right doctor. You can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. And when people say, "Oh, well, what about today? I can't defend Jimmy Kimmel today. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. More often than not, you can even find same-day appointments. So when someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, turn to ZocDoc.
Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/3ML to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/3ML. ZocDoc.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to our second martini here. Bad and oh so tiresome. Barack Obama, once again rewriting history, trying to tell us about the glory days of his presidency where everybody just got along. And he was above the fray. He was always above the fray, he says. I'm not sure what event this is, but in reacting to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, he's tisking the current administration and beyond for people who he sees as trying to score points against their political opponents at a time of national tragedy. Because, of course, he never did that over his 8 years in office. Here's his quote.
When I was president, in the aftermath of tragedies, when Dylan Roof went into a black church and, based on his own words, shot a group of folks who were engaged in Bible study and who had invited him in. And according to him, it was for racist reasons. As President of the United States, my response was not, who may have influenced this troubled young man to engage in that kind of violence, and now let me go after my political opponents and use them.
The Cambridge police acted stupidly. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Every mass shooting, the Republicans, won't do what I want them to do on gun control. He sent practically half his administration to the funeral of Michael Brown in Ferguson. Jim, I could go on and on, but Barack Obama and the truth, they don't spend a lot of time together.
Greg, I'm thinking back to, I want you to get in their faces. And also, if they bring a knife, we bring a gun. And that's why we need gun control. That they're this. As I was watching that, one thought. First of all, I'm really glad we're able to play that video. Greg, it freaked me out at the 2024 Democratic National Convention when Bill Clinton looked old. Barack Obama, the hair is white now. He's looking old. Yep. And it's funny, we look exactly the same as we did back when we started this podcast. But the other thing is that I was struck by, has Barack Obama emerged since the end of his presidency to address any topic? Has it been warmly welcomed? Has anybody said, wow, that was a great unifying speech, and that's exactly what the country needed to hear? The opinion of Obama, obviously, folks on the right always couldn't stand him, and but I think the perspective on him, on both the center and the left, has dropped dramatically. And some of this is, the Democrats who are, trying to grapple with the idea, if he was a successful president, how did we end up with Donald Trump elected president in 2016? And yeah, they can blame Hillary, they can blame a whole bunch, Facebook, Russians, all that kind of stuff. But if America was doing great, it probably would not have elected Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a things are going fine, let's, try this type at it. Electing Donald Trump is like I don't want to say a sign of panic, but that's a sign of desperate measures. This is not, the status quo is not acceptable, is the message when you get something like that. And I think Democrats have been kind of trying to grapple with that since 2016. And I think a lot more of them have concluded that Obama wasn't as good as they wanted to believe at that time. Now, mostly they demonized neoliberalism. They convinced themselves that Obama was too nice, that Obama wasn't tough enough, that Obama didn't stand up to Republicans enough. And I don't think that really is held up by the record, but, fine. When he came out on the campaign trail for Kamala Harris and he said to black men, I'm disappointed in you, I don't know if that really was the resonant message that the Harris campaign was really itching for. Some of these post-campaign books have made it very clear that Obama did not think very highly of Kamala Harris. Neither he nor Michelle Obama. That they, wanted an open primary, in the middle of summer of 2024, and apparently liked Gretchen Whitmer and Maryland Governor Wes Moore. Neither one of them knew that Obama was talking up this scenario. Obviously, it did not come to pass. Biden endorsed Harris within like 20 minutes of announcing he wasn't going to be the nominee, and there was no serious effort at that. I don't want to say Obama is an irrelevant figure in Democratic Party politics, but I also feel like his influence is significantly less, and that each Trump victory has taken a real shot out of that. So it's not surprising to me that he would choose to remember that he was always the post-partisan healer and forget all the times that he did have combative, and some would say incendiary comments and remarks regarding political controversies and racial controversies and things like that. It's not surprising. I think a lot of people, do that. But I also think, I'm also struck by the fact that Obama came out and did this. I feel like I've seen a lot more conservatives saying, here he goes again. Some people say we should do this. I have this sensible idea in the middle that happens to be very liberal, but I found one person on the left who thinks I'm not doing far enough. So therefore I must be in the middle. That this is stable. I haven't seen Democrats talking about this. I think Democrats aren't all that interested in what Barack Obama has to say anymore. So it probably said, it'd be interesting. You and I, this is a right of center podcast. I wonder how many left of center podcasts are talking about Obama's comments these days.
Yeah, I don't know. You're right about 2020, though, because Joe Biden in that campaign basically walked into every debate going, I was right there with Barack. And everybody else is going, yeah, you guys weren't tough enough. You guys didn't go far enough. And by that time, being next to Obama was a bad thing in the Democratic Party. I specifically remember, though, Obama coming to the White House press room. There was a mass shooting at a community college. And I think, unfortunately, the casualty count was pretty high. And he just launched right into it. He was just like, people say that this is not the right time to talk politics, but I'm going to do it. We got to do this now. We're not going to, if you care about this stuff, you have to do it.
Every mass shooting was the fault of the NRA. Every mass shooting was a result of the fact that, Americans have the Second Amendment and people own guns. Mental health was never an issue. Extremism, the idea of being radicalized online, the fact that the vast majority of school shooters, tend to be obsessed with Columbine before they do it is, all these things. Yeah, so we should probably move on, Greg.
Yeah. We could talk about
I need a good night's sleep.
Well, I got one last night. It's amazing, the Brooklyn bedding mattress that I've got. You can go online. You can pick from a wide variety of firmness and softness, and the cooling mattress. We got the Aurora Lux cooling model. It was fantastic to watch this thing just fill right up after breaking the vacuum seal, and it, of course, is a lovely mattress. I laid down last night completely exhausted. Never even stirred as far as I know. You'd have to ask Mrs. Carampus, I guess, but woke up without tossing and turning whatsoever and had a great night's sleep, very much refreshed. And so Brooklyn bedding, I could not be more impressed.
Greg, I don't know how you sleep, and I don't really want to know, but Brooklyn Bedding knows that sleep is not one size fits all. That's why they offer mattresses for everybody with every sleep style, even in hard-to-find sizes. So if you're not sure which mattress is right for you, just take the Brooklyn Bedding sleep quiz, find your perfect match, often in under 2 minutes.
Yeah, and so go to brooklynbedding.com and use our promo code 3ML at checkout to get 30% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. That's brooklynbedding.com and the promo code 3ML for 30% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name, 3 Martini Lunch, after checkout so they know that we sent you. All right, Jim, on to our final martini. It's both crazy and bad. And of course, a week ago Wednesday that Charlie Kirk was assassinated out there at Utah Valley University. And in the chaos in the moments immediately following that, we saw this old guy on the ground, this old, mostly bald guy with white hair on the sides, down on all fours and saying, I'm the shooter, shoot me. I'm the shooter, shoot me. And soon we heard, okay, we got the shooter in custody. And pretty soon they figured out, no, this guy's not the shooter. He had no idea where the gun was. There was no more evidence. He was just not the guy. And so what we've learned since then from authorities is that this guy, whose name is George Zinn, he's 71, basically did that because he wanted the real shooter to have more time to get away. That was his initial instinct after this heinous event, was to get the shooter a few extra seconds or minutes to get away. So he's now facing an obstruction of justice charge for that, which makes sense. But also, when he was taken into custody, probably didn't think about this part when he decided to pretend he was the shooter. They went through his stuff. They went through his phone. And guess what? New York Post. The elderly rabble-rouser who allegedly hindered Utah authorities' response after Charlie Kirk was fatally shot is now accused of keeping graphic sexual photos of children on his phone. Zinn was charged with 4 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor after investigators found more than 20 images of kids as young as 5 years old, at least partially naked and posing in a sexual way, according to the Utah County Sheriff's Office. This is the most disgusting part. Zinn admitted
you haven't gotten to the disgusting part yet? That's pretty bad so far.
This is more details about that.
Okay.
Quote, Zinn admitted that he gets, and if you have kids nearby, you probably want to pause, that he gets sexual gratification from viewing and sharing child sexual abuse material with others, and that his preferred victim age is 5 to 12 years old. Jim, we are seeing the very, very bottom of the barrel of evil here.
So I was going to say, considering his surname, I hope he never publishes a people's history of what I found online. But that's a deep cut for you political philosopher types. I just want to, let's walk through, as disturbing as this guy's mind is, let's not even look at his mindset. Let's just look at his decision making. He's into this, which is abominable on so many different levels. He keeps it on his phone. He hates, Charlie Kirk. He goes to the rally and think about how thrilled he must have been to have witnessed the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And then he's thinking, oh, somebody did this and they're probably trying to escape the police now. I'm going to say that I did it. Even though I don't have a gun, even though there's no evidence, I'm going to do this because the police are going to have to respond to this. They're going to have to take me into custody. And hopefully I can distract the police long enough so that the real shooter gets away and, for all we know, commits additional political assassinations in the future or something. And he does this with kiddie porn on his phone the whole time. Like, Jay Leno used to do Stupid Criminals in his headline segments back. Folks, this was back when there were printed newspapers and people would look at headlines. And also, this was back when late night talk shows were funny. I know it feels like a really long time ago.
It's a different era.
Greg and I were little kids, that it's just one of those things where, like, this is we have some astonishingly crazy and dumb people in this world. One of them just happened to be there. I don't think his actions single-handedly allowed the perpetrator to get away. I certainly haven't seen any reporting indicating that. There was a huge crowd of people running around. I figure if you're a cop on that location, it's like trying to pick a needle in a haystack, and particularly when he drops the gun and just kind of blends in with the crowd. But wow, and like I said, I kind of said this jokingly at the beginning of this podcast. Like, thank God this guy's off the streets. Thank God this guy's not able to do what he's been doing, and he'll have his day in court, but country's a better place with this guy behind bars.
Exactly. There are other reports that this guy's got a history of phoning in fake bomb threats, so he's been a problem for a long time, and now we know the extent of it, or at least we think we know the extent of it, and so hopefully he's behind bars for a very long time. So not the note we generally like to end on, but we just didn't want to let this guy slip under the radar just because he's not the one who pulled the trigger. There's another really bad guy at this event, unfortunately. So, Jim?
So, law enforcement's 2 for 2.
Yeah. Looks like they've got their man twice here. Jim, have a good day. See you Friday.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Thursday. Join us again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.